Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to the Parenthood. This is episode 2. Thank you guys for joining us again. Today I am joined by the DeMerchants from, which campus are you guys from? Alexandria, right?
Yes.
Yep.
So the Alexandria campus is in the house. Also, I've got the lovely Casey Sylvain joining us as well. And today's topic, we're talking all about parenting in the digital age. I know that's a question that's been on lots of people's hearts and minds. And like for me, I've got 3 kids, 1 teenager, 2 in elementary, 1 about to move up to middle school, 1 cell phone. You know, it's a crazy thing to have to wrap your head around because I don't know about you guys, but I didn't grow up with all this technology at my disposal. So maybe let's start there and just talk about how each of us kind of grew up and what we're thinking about how our kids are growing up now. Maybe tell that story.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I remember growing up was all about sports for me. Growing up, it was outside. You know, you knew who your friends were not because of what the posts were saying, but because where the bikes were. You know, that's what life was. Hanging out at friends' houses. You know, so I was in sports, hanging out, going to summer camp, doing those kind of things. And here we are, 20, 30 years later, and we have, our 8-year-old who's just pining for a cell phone. Like, Dad, it's like, how much longer can I get a cell phone? Like, so-and-so has a cell phone. Like, I'm like, okay, cool, all right. It's like,
That's a hard no.
yeah, sounds cool.
I'd love to meet their parents.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, his dad also drives a Benz, all right?
Yeah, and they don't just want any phone, right?
Exactly,
They
no.
want, like, the latest model.
Yes.
With all the bells and whistles.
Yes.
It's got 13 cameras on the front.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that sort of
Got to
thing.
get those filters for those
That's
8-year-olds.
right. Hashtag filters, yes. What about you, Casey?
I did not grow up with any sort of technology whatsoever. Like, I remember I got my first cell phone at 16. So I was my whole life basically no technology, no computer, nothing. Like, all my reports were handwritten. Like, now they have no idea how to write complete sentences because it's in LOLs and BTWs. Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah. I don't know about y'all. I'm
Totes,
probably
totes.
dating myself now, but like I remember car phones. Like
Oh,
Yes.
like
The
legit.
The briefcase thing? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I
Yes.
had an uncle that had a car phone. He had a Beamer, and it was just the coolest thing, right?
Yeah.
And so he had it in the center console, and he would take it out, and like you got to pull the antenna out, and the whole 9.
Yeah.
It's just
yeah.
crazy. But now we started out, phones were giant. And then when I got my first cell phone, it was probably this size. It was tiny.
Yep.
And now we're back to giant cell phones.
Like,
again.
this is my new
This
phone.
is your-
Right here, it's the new.
you clip
yeah.
it on your hip
Yes.
and all of that. But anyway, so thinking about like how we grew up, like what are maybe some of the challenges that you see now that kids have phones and computers, iPads, all this sort of stuff at their disposal?
For us, I've noticed in our family, they have a hard time communicating with one another, making eye contact. Like, even though Dave and I speak to them, like, look up at me, speak to me, not at me, they don't know how to relate to one another because they're relating through a screen and not face to face.
Yeah. What about you guys?
I think 2 things come to mind: regulating the time that they're on it. I feel like that's like always a recurring conversation of, like we have to revisit it over and over again. Like, how much time are we going to give them on these things? And then also the way it affects them, because we see big differences in their moods. Like, even when they're just playing like innocent little video games and stuff, it just totally changes. Like, you have to like detox them and bring them back into social civilization. And so those are the 2 things I feel like we over and over again keep addressing.
To piggyback what she's saying is, so we do a lot of road trips. My whole family, we're from, well, kind of where you guys are from, northeast of Maine. So we've had to travel a 24-hour drive.
Wow.
And with, we have a gaggle of kids. We have 5 kids. But we do trips well because we cut down. We don't do screen time or anything. We have the videos for emergencies when mom and dad, like, we've had enough. But most times we just drive and, like, you have to talk to each other. Look outside, and they do really well. I mean, that's
awesome.
And yes, like, whoa, you guys are horrible parents. But we just notice when the movie's on, like, that's good for, maybe nap time, but too much screen time, and they're like fighting and bickering, and, mom and dad, we're driving.
Have you guys seen maybe have you run into some issues with them having screen time and then taking that away, or just finding the balance?
Yes, for sure.
Definitely.
Yes. It's so hard because you take it away and they're good for a while and you feel like, oh, well, everybody else has it, so we'll give it back and be nice and give them this thing again. But then it's so hard to take it away again. It's a constant like give and take with them. And it gets to a point, I know we're at a point where like I can't be giving anymore. Like I just have to take and be done because it's too much for their hearts, it's too much for their brains. Like they can't comprehend limits. They're just not there yet.
And I agree 100% with that. Just because for me personally, to be completely transparent, I mean, my wife, she knows all this anyway. But growing up, once I was able to start playing video games, like that was, oh, hey, watch out, world. Like I'm focused on the screen, to the point where it affected me personally and spiritually as well, because that's all I wanted to do. And growing up, I knew the struggles that I had to go through. And then I see that also in my own kids. So I'm really kind of hardcore with no games. I just kind of yank it. Maybe it's wrong, maybe it's not, but I know because I can see the boys especially, like when they're playing games and someone comes in, like they just roll their eyes or, it's like they're just focused in on that video game. We don't allow we don't play any bad games, quote unquote bad. We'll do sports games, but still, or like the Lego games, but still like they're just focused on that screen and just forget about the outside world. And I understand wholeheartedly because even to this day, I'm in my mid-30s, that's what I do to kind of veg out, relax, And there are times I'll be in this game and just like I'm 18 again, I can feel like my wife coming like, all right, you put the kids down, I'm almost done. I don't want my boys to see that. And, but in those moments, I'm just like, that's all it is, It just really truly affects me.
That's an interesting perspective because sometimes we don't realize that as adults, we are just as addicted to our devices as our kids are. And we want to model for them best practices and all that sort of stuff, but we have to think about, and my hands sometimes, I get cramps in my hands because I've held my phone for so long, just in the same position.
The blood runs down from your
it's
arm.
like, I have the claw here. I've got carpal tunnel or whatever. But you don't want your kids to see that, but at the same time, you almost overlook the fact that, oh yeah, this thing has been attached to my hand, but here I am telling my kids, hey, you need to put that down. It's time to focus.
That's just like the story. I mean, it's just sin in general. Like you're sitting in church, I hope my neighbor hears this. Like I hope they hear what's going on. I hope my spouse heard this. It's for you. Submission once again. You're totally right.
Let's talk about some of the differences in maybe gender that we see in kids as it relates to some of the challenges here. I had two girls first, and my girls were great. Like they weren't really big into video games. They didn't have devices all that much. They weren't attached to the iPads and all that sort of stuff. We had the devices, but they just weren't attached. It wasn't until my oldest got a cell phone. And then she became the enemy of her younger two siblings. And now I've started to see a shift. I have to remind her to put her phone down because she actually was a big bookworm. Like she loved reading, and she still loves to read, but I've started to see the reading go down and more of this, scrolling and playing games.
Books are on there, though, Dad. That's what it is. Books
she
are on
says
there.
that. And you're not going to pull a fast one on me.
I know.
So, do you see challenges or differences in maybe the girls versus the boys? My son just wants to play video games. That's all he wants to do.
Yeah, for us, we've got two boys first and then our girl. And with the boys, it is more competitive games, shooter games, Fortnite. I always pronounce this wrong and they get so mad at me. But Roblox, I call it roadblocks all the time. And they're like, Mom, that's not it. Every time. And
playing the roadblocks.
They like that. And I guess there are different games you can play in that. And so they lean towards all boy-oriented fighter, shooter things. And there's a fashion show you can do in that, and ponies and princesses. And so there is a total difference in the boys and our girl. Completely.
It's interesting how, those games sometimes kind of lock kids into some of those more traditional gender specific roles and things. And they're attracted to certain types of games because of that. I've tried to keep mine away from the fighter stuff, but my son, I didn't even know what Fortnite was probably a year ago. But I kept seeing everybody doing the floss and the Orange Justice and all this sort of stuff. And then I learned, oh, that's from Fortnite. And then I look at my son, who's 9, and I go, where did you haven't played Fortnite before, but it was just pervasive that it's out there.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
It's one of those things you can't get away from.
No.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into a slightly more serious topic, and talk about, in the digital age, we have digital bullying. And that's something I know the schools are talking a lot about. And maybe what have you guys heard or even experienced? Hopefully not, but this might be something that could help somebody that's watching in the cyberbullying.
Well, for one thing, just to understand that just because we didn't deal with it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And it's a very real thing. People can be bullied cyberly and online and whatever you want to call it, just because we didn't go through it. And just, I think it's the wrong approach for a father and for a mother just to hear it and to say, oh, just don't worry about it. Just kind of, there is an element to that of not worrying about it, but at the same time, don't dismiss it as it's not a big deal. Because these children are being raised in a society where, right now, this is digital. What we're doing is on a screen. This has an impact, or we wouldn't be doing this in itself. And so these kids are living in front of a screen. So, with Instagram, a lot, I know, as a youth pastor for, about 6 years, just a lot of these students would post something, and if you get likes, but if you don't get a certain amount of likes in a amount of time, you take it down, because you're not worthy enough or whatever it is. And just knowing that these are very real things, and just being able to kind of nip it in the bud and just saying, hey, hey son, hey daughter, I'm aware of the life you live and I know how difficult it is, kind of going hand in hand and saying, and just saying, hey, we're in this together. I'm aware of what you're going through. Yes, there's an element of it not being real, but those emotions and what they're going through and the put downs are very real. And just understanding that.
I think even if, as a parent, even if you're not fully aware of what all is out there, this does give an opportunity for you to go and approach your child and become a learner to them.
Sure.
We're always, as parents, we're the ones that are, telling them that they need to come to us about things, but sometimes we need to model that for them and go to them and say, what is it that you're experiencing? And maybe that could open them up a little bit to share what's going on, or just to educate us. Because I don't know, I had to learn maybe a couple years ago about the Vault app. So you got
The kids are
the Vault.
all right. So I'm gonna help.
You don't know that one?
Right now. All right. So take notes.
Oh yes,
on this,
I do know
guys.
this. Okay, I know.
The Vault app is an app on your phone. It looks like a calculator.
Yeah, and they save.
But it's really it's a front door, and then they type in their code into the calculator, and it opens up where they can save photos or other things that they would normally hide.
Right.
Delightful.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have
Takes
heard of
no
this.
check for
All right.
for Vault.
Yeah.
We'll be going
That's
back
good.
and doing that.
Yeah.
There's some other apps out there, but maybe you guys Google some resources, parents out there, see what your kids are getting into and what they're talking about, and check that stuff out. But that can be a way for them to hide what's actually going on.
Yeah.
Whether that's, somebody's bullying them, or maybe they're hiding something about something that they're doing with somebody else.
Yeah.
Maybe talk about what have you heard from maybe the schools? Or have the schools been educating you guys as parents and providing resources on encountering this?
Yes, they have. We get letters or emails whenever there has been an issue where guidance counselors or principal or vice principal or whatever has been involved in either a cyberbullying incident or a sexting incident. They write the parents and let us know that they are taking care of it. But one thing for us is, we pay for their phone, and so we do not allow them to not let us look at it. We always have their password. We read every text message. We read every Snapchat. We read everything. And, with doing that, we have found things that we're not okay with. And we have had to have already some hard conversations like, your friends may be speaking this way, but in our family, we absolutely do not do that to one another. And you are called to be higher than that because what our family believes. We believe in Jesus. We believe in grace. We believe in love. Like, we don't speak this way and do these things. So we've already had to have some of those hard conversations. And also, like, along the lines of sexting, our kids haven't directly been involved, but we've seen little threads of possible things. And my husband has sat and looked at them and said, what if you saw a picture that was not okay of a girl? That's somebody's daughter. That's somebody's sister. What would you think if that was your sister? How would you react? So we always throw it back like, how would you handle this? They need to be able to know that now. Like, they're not as innocent anymore as they should be.
And, like, our kids are on the younger side, so we're not really there yet. Like, they don't have their own devices and stuff. They have, I don't even know what it's called, some, Amazon thing, a Kindle maybe, I don't know.
The free time.
So they have that sort of stuff, but they've already kind of outgrown that. So we're in this weird place where we're like, they don't really want to do that anymore. They want to play the video games. They want to do the Roblox thing. For sure, that's a thing now.
Because all their friends are on it and they can add each other.
And so but it's really funny because, like, we don't keep a tablet at our house that they can access it on. They could do it on our phone, but we don't let them. So they, like, live for the grandparents. Shout out to the grandparents that come with their iPads. And, like, they're like, not only is it a perk of that, but it's also of seeing their grandparents and then all the iPad time to play all those games that we don't ever have. But they, like, my son's been, like, writing everybody's usernames down for him and stuff. And I'm already like, okay, we're at this place where we can read now. And so we can read what's being in those interactions back and forth. And I think that there's a part of me that wants to kind of settle into, like, the, my kids already have surpassed me in the technology world, and I'm cool with that. Like, go ahead. But, like, just you sharing the vault, it's like we have to make sure we're on top of it. We have to make sure we know what's going on. We have to be willing to have conversations and with them and let them know that it's okay to keep talking to us about it, that we want to stay in the loop, not just because we want to make all the rules, but because we want to be able to have an open conversation that they can come to us and tell us what's happening, that's a safe place, and keep instilling those values like you were talking about, that it's so important to understand why we do the things we do, or we don't partake in the things that we do, that there's more to it than just rules and regimens.
And they're not going to get in trouble when they come to us.
Exactly.
Like, you are going to mess up. We all do. We're sinful. Like, that is our nature. And we're not going to scream at you. You're not going to get your device immediately taken away.
Right.
Maybe. We don't know.
Right. Depends on the case. Right. Like, if they're sharing something happened or they saw something that in that sort of scenario.
You don't want to instill fear in them. You want to instill peace, compassion, like that you are listening, and you do understand, even though it does. I have experience. It does kill your parent heart. Like,
totally
it
does.
breaks it for what they're going through and what they're listening to and experiencing at the ages that they're at.
But like you said, how the schools are talking to them about it, and they are addressing it, and they are, so it's coming from those different areas. Like, they're hearing it from school, so we've got to make sure we're having the dialogues about it at home, because if not, then they're getting it from the other places. And even though they may be trying to instill, like, good habits, it may not be the same values that we want to have for our household. So I just think open conversation between each other, understanding what's going on, and open conversation with your children is just so important when it comes to this.
And just as my teammate talked on, I mean, it's so important for us to have open dialogue and communication. I mean, that's when it all boils down to, you can say these things and say, don't do this, but if they're not seeing mom or dad or mom living it out and actually like being, full of grace. They're not going to be, oh, then they don't really mean it. They're just going to kind of hold back. I mean, for us, like in our house, like we're an open book. I mean, we just, I talk to my kids about sex when they're, 4 years old, just very, some people, oh, that's
in
way
a way
too
that's
early.
appropriate for
Yeah,
a
like,
4-year-old.
like just talking, like I want my kids to hear from daddy in
Yeah.
like a biblical way and like the right way and how mommy and daddy love each other and just, because I know the world. I know for me, the image when I was 6, I know, that was me. And these kids are already past that. And especially in the digital age. But just having the conversations, the awkward conversations, I know a lot of us want to be private people, but the truth of it is, like, we need to raise our children to be God-fearing kids and aware that these things, which are meant for good, Satan is twisted to be bad, but they're not necessarily bad things, but in this context they are. And if I happen to struggle and fall upon it, I know that dad is there or mom is there to help me through it because, 1, they went through it, or 2, because they say they're going to be with me, So just the conversation just can't go to.
So the Bible talks about being wise as serpents and harmless as doves. And I think that's something that, what does that really mean? But when you apply it in context here, that's talking about we need to be aware as parents of what's out there in the world, how the enemy would come in and utilize some things against us. But as long as we're aware of those things, we can be teaching our kids the right way to live, how to be an example, and that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that what you guys were talking about, which was really interesting, is the juxtaposition of how do we raise our children with our values in a world that seems to be growing increasingly against that. And what have you guys run up against when you've not had iPads and things in the home, or try to tell your kids that this is the way we do it as believers in Jesus, but maybe you guys run into some feedback or pushback from other parents?
Ooh, I don't know.
I feel like I haven't had a load of conversations with other parents yet. I would like to, with some of them that are giving their kids their cell phones already, making us have the recurring conversation of cell phones with our 7.
We give them that judgmental look.
But I don't know that we're there. I know it's coming though. That these will be conversations that we have with other parents who are like, "Whoa, why so strict?" Or just because it looks so much different than when you don't have those same.
But we're called to stand out, though, right?
Yeah.
We live in the world and not of it. There are things that we can have healthy boundaries on, and modeled out for other people. And in a way, we can be quiet missionaries doing that, just living out our lives that way. Go
We
ahead.
tell our guys, our kids, and I have had a few conversations with parents, everything is a choice. And everybody has the right to choose what they want to do. And so we choose to raise them with the beliefs of the Bible, with the beliefs of Jesus.
Yeah.
And we're not going to compromise on that just because we're uncomfortable or we don't fit in. And that's hard for them. Like, they want to fit in.
Right.
They want to be liked. And it's really hard to explain to them, like, not everybody has to like you. And it's even hard for adults. Like, not everybody has to like you. Not everybody has to text you. Not everybody has to answer you. And that's
not everybody's your friend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not where we're living now. Like, everybody needs to be everybody's friend. And that's just not true.
Right.
So it's hard. It's very hard for them to understand everybody has a choice, but the choice that we have in our home, you have to follow now because you're in our home. What you choose when you go out, that's not up to me. That's between you and the Lord. But right now, you live in my home. You're under my authority.
Ooh, that's old school.
Then,
I love it.
That's just it. And not necessarily authority in like an anger, like on you kind of way, but like, it's my responsibility to the Lord to grow you. And I'm going to have to answer for that. And how do I want to answer for that? Like, that's it. I want my God to say, well done, good and faithful servant, in all of the parenting things. And I'm not perfect. Dave and I are far from perfect with our kids. We have daily battles with them. and we are human, and we mess up all the time, but we choose to do it again the next day, and the next day, and the next.
It's love.
What's maybe a way that you are utilizing to your advantage some of the digital tools that are out there to actually teach them about Jesus or help them to grow their faith?
Yeah, so with me, I mean, Kara hears it. I mean, she does it as well, but I'm kind of cheesy with it because I'm a pastor, so I was trying to bring everything back. But anything we watch, any show they're watching, I try and say, now that wasn't a good decision, was it? You know, like I try and come back, like, you see how Billy treated her? Like, is that what God would want? I totally do. Like, there's like, I have a soundtrack. Billy. I have like 18 different sweater vests I put on. I come out, there's a felt board I use.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No, but in reality, though, like we do, I mean, like not really when we're playing games, like when we're playing Madden, like I'm trying to win, okay? But, you know, if we're watching shows or movies, you know, we've already talked, a lot of our kids, with the thing, we watch movies with there's some language, but our children know, like we live in the world but not of it, like you've already said. So our children know there are certain words that other people say that we don't say because we're believers. And even if you're believers, you know, that's a whole separate thing. But we just choose not to say those words in our house. And so our kids, when they hear those words, they just kind of look back at us like, oh. You know, we're trying to create less, you know, those, so we don't have those preacher kids are like, what do I do? What do I do with my hands? You know, like what? But they know, like, just because we try and have teaching moments, and every time we're watching a movie, you know, it can be something as cheesy as that. But like, I mean, that's how I was raised. My father, you know, is my best friend, and he was a pastor, and that's how, you know, she was raised with her grandfather, and just knowing, you know, she had her parents raised her, but her parents raised her. Her grandfather was a Southern Baptist pastor, but anyway, but just we try and find little teaching moments, as cheesy as they can be. I combat that because I believe the enemy is telling us it's cheesy when really it's needed. You know, like you can say, oh, that's cheesy, like, but then that keeps me. You know, if I hear that, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do it, but then I miss out on an opportunity, you know, to parent and to teach in a cheesy way.
For us, Right Now Media has been huge.
Okay.
We have used that for years.
It's a great tool.
And there's an app, the Storybook Bible app, and it is a book, and it's a great storybook Bible, beautifully illustrated. But they have an interactive app for kids probably y'all's age, like younger, and Olivia loved it when she was younger. But we use that a lot because they have content for every age group. And now that we have a 13-year-old and he's dealing with more difficult things than his siblings.
What happens around 13?
They do offer things like that for him. So, you know, some apps can be really aged down for him. But we found that right now spans all age groups.
Yeah.
So for us, it's worked.
That's great.
One thing that we didn't say when we started, and we probably should have. So our kids are 8 years old, 7, 6, 2, and 2 months. The 2-month-old is struggling with some things. So then you guys have a 13-year-old and
a 13-year-old, 11-year-old, 9-year-old at home.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So just so
Ours
everyone
are the exact same ages.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
We have
All right.
13 and 11-year-old girls.
Yeah.
They have 13 and 11-year-old boys.
Right.
Okay. Cool.
And then my son is 9. Their daughter's 9.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Cool.
So I'll tell a story about something that's happened with my son, with Chase. So Chase is my rambunctious 9-year-old, complete opposite of his sweet angelic sisters.
Yes.
I love him to death, but he's so much like me. It's scary. Well, a couple of years ago, Chase started having some behavioral issues in school. And we took him to a behavioral specialist. We get him checked out, all that sort of stuff. They had us change his diet. They had us, you know, do all kinds of different things. We were looking at, you know, how he thinks and his thought patterns and his brain development. Lots of stuff that people smarter than me had to let me know, like, this is what's going on with him. But the one thing I kept, like, we were going to do all of that, but my wife and I came together and we said, let's go to God about this. Like, this is our son, but really it's God's son that he's entrusted to us.
Right.
And he knows him better than anybody else. And what we did was we prayed, and God, like, communicated to us. We felt like he had impressed upon our hearts to fast. And I've always been like big into fasting, but I'd never really, I felt like it was an imposition, like my kids weren't ready to fast and all that sort of thing. But I really felt strongly about this. And what we fasted was screens, social media for us, but TV, like we totally cut out all this stuff. And more than the diet, more than him going to gluten-free and giving up dairy and all the other stuff, the exercises that he was doing, when we shut that down, we saw a night and day difference in him.
I believe it.
And it's so strange because you see that and it's like God's given you like, hey, just disconnect from all this stuff, these distractions that are out there, so that actually he can connect with his heavenly Father too. And it'll just bring him down. But the funny thing is, we go right back. It's the constant draw or pull to go right back because it's hard to maintain that all the time. But it's easy to go, I'm busy, here, watch this. And that'll pacify. You know?
And we're all guilty of it.
I just wanted to share that for
It's a great story.
somebody out there that you've been struggling, you've heard about all the stories that we've had of triumphs for us, but I want you to know they're failures too.
Absolutely.
And we all struggle with this.
Absolutely.
So, do any of you guys have maybe a story personally where you've had not just a success, but maybe a struggle or a failure in this area?
I think for me, working, I haven't worked. I was a stay-at-home mom with them for 12 years.
Okay. Wow.
So my time was devoted to them. And my attention was on them. And since working, you know, we communicate at work through computer, through iPhone. And I work for the church, and church doesn't stop at 5 o'clock. Like, you know, things constantly come in, and it's a struggle now. Like, just being transparent, it's a struggle now. When I get home, my phone doesn't go away. Like, it does come with me, and I catch myself many times being like, hold on, I need to just, I'm working. It's after 5, or it's 7, or it's 8, or it's 9. Like, you know, that happens at our house. So Dave and I, it's not just me, it is Dave too, and he knows that, so I'm not saying anything he would say. But
we love you, Dave.
We love you very much. But it's a problem, like, and it's something that God has, the Holy Spirit has convicted us about, but it's obviously still a struggle because it's not getting fixed. So that is a big failure that comes to me when you ask that.
And I would say, I mean, that just to echo that as well. I mean, for me, or one time in particular, our son Kai, when he was 2.5, 3, young age, I remember we were hanging out, and my phone went off, and he came to me, and he was like, Daddy need to go to work? I gave him his phone, which is cute, but it really spoke to me just because, like, you know, like he just equates like that, and I don't want him to think, you know, that's what takes Daddy away from him. I mean, as a pastor already raising kids, you know, hearing the pastor's kids are always the craziest ones. We always try to focus that much harder because, you know, I want them to love God and love the church and not view the church as what took Daddy away. You know, so we do things together. We're a huge family in that. But my phone, I don't want him to think that, you know, Daddy has to work all the time, and that, you know, and it is true. Like, we're always kind of quote unquote on the clock. We just need to make sure that we understand that us as parents, us as individuals, just that our kids are watching us. You know, our kids are watching us, and it just really impacted me saying, like, I need to be able to set the phone aside. Like, I'm gonna probably get there, and it's gonna be stressful because I may have like 5 or 6 missed calls. But to be honest, like, when I get home, I try and put my phone away to try and focus and have family time. In the beginning, it used to stress me out a lot because I was like, well, what happens if I miss something? More like
FOMO.
99%. FOMO is a real thing.
It's real.
99% of the time, I come back to a missed meme or something. And that's it. You know, like, there's no emergency. You know, it's just like these stresses of what might happen. You know, and I'd rather worry, you know, put that away and be fully present with my, you know, with my wife and with my kids. Because that moment, I remember saying, like, you know, I'm not glued to my phone. That's not my job, but it is the world we live in. And it's okay. It's not, you know, it's a tool that, you know, God gave people skills to be able to figure out how to make it. So, you know, like, we can use it for for His glory, but it doesn't need to be something that our kids think, it's takes us mom and dad away.
Yeah.
Well, I want to just say to somebody, like, right now we're in the midst of this quarantine, and our kids are out of school for 2 weeks, some of them for the rest of the month. I've even heard some are out for the entire rest of the school year.
I heard 12 years. I heard graduation's next week. Yeah.
Just we're sending them all
We're
to
not ready.
college.
Yeah, they're ready. They're ready.
We're not ready.
Get ready.
But like, there are parents out there maybe watching this, and you're just looking at the next couple of weeks, and you have no idea what to do.
Yeah.
I just want you to know, like, we're all in this.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is something us as parents and pastors and folks in ministry, we're going through the same sorts of mental struggles and trying to wrap our minds around how do we keep our kids engaged for these next couple of weeks. And so we just want you to know, like, you're not alone.
Right.
Take a moment, breathe. It's going to be okay. And maybe, Kara, would you have maybe a word of encouragement to
She's
a
got
mom out there that's watching this, that's for the next couple of weeks, they got their kids at home?
Yeah. Grace upon grace. Some days are days that you get it right and you feel like, man, we killed it today. We had balance. We did a good job today. I was creative. Some days you're gonna wake up and you're gonna be tired. You're gonna be like, please just go watch that TV and do those things, and that's okay too. I think we just need to have grace. We need to have boundaries. These are unusual times, so all the more grace and all the more wiggle room to figure it out on a day-to-day basis, but we have a chance to be still here, and I think it's important. And by be still, I mean be intentional. So show up, be there, put your phone down, have the conversations. It's not just about withholding it from them, it's about withholding it from yourself. And I think that that we need to like have that conversation more, that it's something that we've got to work on. Thanks iPhone for telling us how our screen usage today. Nothing gets you convicted. But yeah, and I saw mine went up like a percentage in the past few days, and I was like, cool. Yep, it's gonna go up more. And I think be intentional about what we're consuming. We've already put some things out there online, and I'm sure we can do it again, of family resources, of things you guys can be consuming as a family, not just individually. Right. And so we're doing this for conversations for other parents, but there's other things out there that we'll put out there that are for the whole family to watch together. And so I think just grace, a lot of grace.
Yeah. Well, there's tons of content that's being produced right now that's going to be aired on our social media platforms. So be sure over these next couple of weeks, follow us, like us, share us, subscribe, all that good stuff, because there's great content that we're going to be putting out. Also, Casey mentioned Right Now Media. That is available for every person that calls New Life home. And even if you don't, hey, we'll give it away. It's our free gift to you. Check that out, and there's a way that you can sign up for that, get a free account. There's all sorts of content on there available for you and your entire family. But right now, that's it for this episode, episode 2 of the Parenthood. We'll see you guys next time.